All right. So, let me tell you the story of the time my brother almost killed my neighbor. And I don't mean like almost killed him, like that close. Like he should buy a scratch-off ticket because he was the luckiest little boy that day. Growing up, I lived on top of a big hill. My parents had a house on a big hill, which means big hill means steep driveway. And at the time, our driveway was gravel. It wasn't paved. Every time it rained, the driveway would kind of wash out. And over the year, everything would kind of wash out to the side and sort of make convex, is that the shape? Yeah, convex shape, where like if your car got off a little bit to one side or the other, you were going in the ditch. That meant that every couple of years, we would either have to hire somebody or rent some sort of piece of machinery to kind of scrape everything back flat because it got to the point where just driving up the driveway was miserable. And one year, we rented a Bobcat, a front end loader, with a bucket scoop on the front. But it was like the world's shittiest Bobcat you've ever seen. Like rusted, really questionable, but that's the one we got. My brother, he was 16 or 17 at the time, so he had a driver's license, but I don't think technically he was supposed to be driving it, but that wouldn't stop him. He took the job upon himself to level out that driveway. And I remember he was working, it was dusk. It was almost nighttime. My neighbors and I, their parents had just gotten home and they bought him some silly light up toy and we were playing with them and we made our way over towards what my brother was doing because we could hear the machine in the background. So they wanted to show off their light up toys or whatever to him. So he turns off the machine, puts on the emergency brake and stops. But he stops a little bit on an incline, which in retrospect was probably a pretty bad idea. So they show him his toy. They're, Nate, look at this. It's so cool. They start stepping on the front bucket of the Bobcat. My brother kind of tells him, hey, get off. Like, what are you doing here? This is a piece of heavy machinery. It's not a toy. For whatever reason, they get back on that bucket and they start jumping on it. The machine's kind of shaking. And my brother keeps telling him, get off the bucket, get off the bucket. And I'm not on this thing. Like, I know better. I don't know what was wrong with these kids, but they thought it was a funny idea to or to jump on the bucket of a Bobcat. And so it starts creaking, makes kind of a silly squeak, and then you hear, and you knew something right then and there had gone horribly wrong. It starts freewheeling, like it's going. And it starts slow. I back off, and the older neighbor, he jumps back. But the younger neighbor, instead of going off to the side, he turns tail and starts running straight backwards from it. I'm watching this thing roll down the hill, chasing an 8-year-old boy. And finally, he gets the idea to veer off to the left and out of the way. Mind you, my brother's still in this. He's trying to turn it on, trying to press anything to make this thing stop. So neighbor boy runs off to the left and he's safe. And then for whatever reason, he doubles back in front of it. And right as he doubles back in front of it, it hits him and he's gone. Like, I can't see him anymore. All I see is Bobcat rolling down the hill and I don't see a little boy anymore. We're watching as this thing is freewheeling, picking up speed and going down the driveway. And at the end of the driveway, you have to take a hard left or you go into the forest. But obviously, there's no power steering on that. It's off. It's still not on. And they go crashing into the forest, and you just see trees get knocked over, little trees, not big trees, but still trees. You just hear a horrible thud when the Bobcat finally stops. It's at this moment where you think to yourself, shit, I think he's dead. Who could live that? Did he get run over? Did he get caught between the machine and the trees? We have no idea. It's all the way down there. It's 200 feet down the hill. So the older neighbor and myself, we look at each other, and I think we're both kind of in shock. I think the first question that came out of our mouths was, who's going to tell my dad? I'm thinking to myself, you go tell your dad. But at the same time, I get it. He wants to go see if his brother's okay. So I'm tasked with going to go tell his dad that I think a piece of heavy machinery ran over your son. They don't live that far away, but they live far enough away where it gives you a couple of minutes to think to yourself, what am I going to say? How do I tell this guy this? So I walk up to their front door and I ring the doorbell, and his dad walks up to the door. The man is notorious for wearing a bathrobe and nothing else. Like, that's his signature look. When he's off of work, that bathrobe goes on. He's a big guy, and I kind of look up at him, and the only thing that comes to mind is, I think your son's dead. From that point, he just takes off. I don't know if he heard it or something, but he knew where to go. But he forgets to tie his bathrobe. He's full on, Superman in it down the driveway, buck naked. I'm left there standing, watching a grown man's ass fly by and not knowing what happened next. I walk back slowly to our driveway to figure out what is even happening. Someone, I think at that point, I don't know who called 911. Someone called 911. This boy, God, he was so lucky. When he doubled back in front of the Bobcat, he fell into the bucket, like it scooped him up, and it took him for a ride down the hill. They tore through a couple trees until they hit a tree big enough to stop the Bobcat, and when they hit it, it threw him, and it threw him probably 20 feet. He landed on the ground in a bunch of prickers, but for whatever reason, he was almost completely unharmed. For all the things that could have gone wrong, he was okay. He was shaken up, and I remember him sitting in the back of the ambulance, and they gave him a teddy bear because congratulations, you survived. Here's a teddy bear. I don't know. I guess that's what they do for kids. I've never been in an ambulance, so I've never gotten my teddy bear. If ambulance teddy bears are a thing that you get, I don't know. Let me know. Anyhow, after all of it, us and our neighbors, we never really got along. But that was sort of the turning point. But it kind of happened sort of unfairly because the machine broke. Emergency brakes on machines, they're not meant to break. And they shouldn't break off of the weight of two children jumping on the bucket. Now, should they have been jumping on the bucket? Absolutely not. That's just asking for trouble. One of those sounds like their fault. The other one is just bad maintenance from the rental company. None of it really sounds like my brother's fault, other than the fact that he, stopped it on an incline, which really shouldn't be a big deal because it's in gear, it has an emergency brake. But apparently, guys, just none of that mattered. We never really talked about it afterwards. It kind of just happened. So from here on out, every time I'm at my parents' house and I see my neighbors, I give them a little wave, and they just look at me and scowl at me. And I don't know what they're thinking, but I'm sure it's not good thoughts. But I will never forget having to stand in front of a grown man, look at him, and tell him, I think your son is dead. That's not a very good story, but maybe it is.